Hello everyone, welcome back to another video, and welcome back to the next video for our Glamour style series. And this was actually done from a special request, somebody who's a big fan of the Victorian style era and asked me to see if I can come up with a couple outfits of the Victorian era. And I was actually really excited to do that. So yes, I do read comments and I do love it when somebody puts in a request. So I actually came up with two different styles of Victorian style, I suppose you could call it. And we have one that's a little bit more formal and maybe one that's a little bit more laid back. But first things first, what is the Victorian style clothing mean? Well, Victorian style is actually kind of fashions from the 19th century, and the Victorian era especially was highly romanticized in books and movies. Because during that era, several different types of styles and fashions were created, and every time you see them, you do kind of think of the Victorian era, such as like steampunk costumes, like the Little House on the Prairie costumes, goth style costumes, outfits like that. So all styles representing the Victorian 1800s to the 1900s are included. But generally, when you think of Victorian style, for men you usually think of like high trousers paired with like a dress shirt with a vest, top hats and like gloves, canes, a pocket watch. For women's, it's more like the full skirted dress or separate skirts and a blouse combination. And then you get like a bonnet hat, a shawl, laced up boots, long gloves, heavy jewelry. That's just a very basic idea of when you think of Victorian style, but there are many different ways that you can actually think about it. So here are two different styles of clothing that I came up with, and this is really for females only. I don't plan on doing all of my fashion guides here with just females in mind, but this was just kind of the first thing that came to mind for me when I thought of Victorian style. So the first one we have here is a little bit more casual, and it might be something a little bit more along the lines of what children would wear. So here we have a long sleeve blouse with a high top, kind of frilly sleeves. That's what I first thought of when I thought of the kind of top that we would be looking for. It also comes with a corset. We got the short skirt, high boots, gloves, a matching hat, and heavy jewelry. And it does look a little bit covered up, but this is actually much more in lines of maybe something that a child would wear during the Victorian times. The first one that I used was the Hainish wool autumn shirt. So you can actually purchase this either off the market board or you can make your own. And another good thing here is that you can dye these colors whatever you want. I personally went for a lavender color just because I felt that we needed a little bit of color. But most of the time, the Victorian styles were a little bit more darker. And matching with the shirt, I put in the Far Eastern Beauties Koshita, which is a skirt that you can get from the Monk Station. So both of these pieces are dyeable. Like I said, I just personally went for this color just because I like the color and I thought that it looked really nice on her. I also went for kind of a smaller hat, and these hats were actually quite common during that time as well. I chose the Eastern Socialite's hat, and this one is a little bit smaller. It's got like the pretty little flowers dangling off it. That stuff was actually pretty common in those days as well. People usually had a torn between either getting really big hats or you can get like the little smaller hats. I think the big hats were much more common like in the early 1800s and then gradually kind of evolved down until they became much smaller hats, much more reasonable. And then I think that a lot of it was also put in like from steampunk and gothic styles as well. That was actually a really nice combination. A really big thing though were gloves. Here I chose to go along the lines of the Songbird's gloves. They're really easy to get and they're dyeable. I just left them as they are. But gloves were quite common in those days, and it might be a little bit appropriate right now because with the world, the state that it's in, people are going to very extreme lengths to try to stay as healthy as possible, which I don't blame them. And so it really wouldn't surprise me if gloves start making a comeback. As for the footwear, you can actually play around with this. I chose to go with really high boots that I found. Really good example of these are the Expedier's thigh boots or the Ishgardian thigh boots, because they're both dyeable, like I said. And maybe those higher boots weren't exactly common during the Victorian style, but they do look really nice with the outfit. I do know that children generally wore just the low-heeled type of shoes, and once they grew a little older, once they were nearing of age, they would switch out to more of the high-heeled boots and shoes for after that. Now moving on to the next outfit here, it's a little bit more formal. So this here is actually maybe a little more along the lines of what a young woman would wear, because they were expected to wear much longer dresses, much more poofier dresses, but they still had the corsets, they still had the long sleeves and the gloves. So this here is a dress that is known as the Thanarian Wool Autumn Dress. And once again, you can either get this from the market board or you can craft it yourself, and it is dyeable. I personally went for the white because I'm planning on using this for my healer class, but you can dye it any color that you want. And I actually went for a much higher heeled boot for this particular one. I think I used the Far Eastern Beauty boots, which you can also get from the Mog Station. So these actually have a much higher heel, but any high heels would do. As for the hat, I went for the Songbird hat, which looked a little bit more like it fit in with the whole style, if you ask me. As well as the gloves. Again, gloves were a really big thing. It really doesn't matter what type of gloves that you have, so long as they can match the whole outfit. I personally just went for a little bit more decorative kind of gloves. As for the jewelry for both of these items, you can wear whatever jewelry that you want. In the Victorian era, they kind of went for kind of big and gaudy, so I kind of tried to reflect that. I chose kind of big, noticeable pieces of jewelry. This here is kind of a more simple style than compared to what a other high-born ladies would have worn in those days. So this is much more a kind of middle-class kind of Victorian style. Much more simple, but much more elegant, but I personally think that I did a really good job on these two outfits. So yeah, those are my two ideas for Victorian style dresses. A much more casual look to maybe a little bit more fancy look. So these outfits work for all classes, but only for females. And yeah, I hope you all really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun making this video, and if you have any requests, please drop a suggestion down below. I hope you're looking forward to what I've got planned for next time. And if you're wondering what kind of jobs that you should use for this, it really doesn't matter. You can use this for any job, any class, and it really is depending on you. These are just kind of my ideas of what a kind of style looks like, and just maybe offering helpful guidelines that you can, and just customize it so that it feels a bit more like you. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll be seeing you all again soon. Bye!